Monroe, Louisiana, was a quaint, strange synthesis of rustic charm and lurking urbanity, an amalgam of modest homes and ostentatious buildings, whispering bayous and deafening silence. Yet within this quiet incongruity, beneath the southern sun, unflattering secrets danced on the rims of ordinary happenings. Simon, a middle-aged man of discerning eyes and gentle demeanor, stepped onto the worn-out cobblestones of the local precinct. The sun, an unforgiving spotlight, bleached the world into a parched canvas on which the station stood, a monolith of tedium and hidden complexities. As he meandered through the narrow corridors, the clamor of the station engulfed him. Telephones ringing, keys clattering, an orchestra of human noise reverberating in a symphony of the everyday. His eyes, burdened with empathy, flickered over the faces, victims of identity theft, their personas ripped away from them, leaving them hollowed and eerily unfamiliar with themselves. "Mr. Goodwin," said Officer Daniels, a man in his late 50s, his face a roadmap of countless sleepless nights. "Welcome to our humble hamlet of chaos." Simon offered a warm, genuine smile, his eyes softened with understanding. "A pleasure, Officer Daniels. Let's unravel this chaos together, shall we?" Conversations burgeoned and details unfolded, the tapestry of crime unraveled. Yet between the words spoken and unspoken, a subtle, sinister undertow tugged at the corners of his mind. In the twin tales of the victims and their stolen identities, he sensed a pattern too disturbing, a symmetry too perfect. Later, as dusk cast long shadows, he stood alone in his modest hotel room, its walls painted in hues of melancholy and anonymity. He stared at the cityscape outside, a landscape of dreams and dread, both real and imagined, slowly succumbing to the oppressive blanket of the night. The day's revelations lay strewn on his bed. Files, photos, hastily scribbled notes, a still life of chaos and disorientation. "I'm losing myself, Mr. Goodwin." A victim's words echoed in his mind, a sorrowful refrain against the backdrop of the city's nocturnal symphony. The ominous resonance of the statement nudged at the gates of his own childhood trauma, that terrible abyss of being lost, a specter he'd been running from for years. As he was about to succumb to the realm of dreams, he noticed a shadow, a flicker at the corner of his vision. He shook his head, attributing it to exhaustion. Still, the room felt colder, the silence deeper, and an unspoken unease shivered its way down his spine. Simon, now somewhat familiar with Monroe's unhurried rhythm, steeled himself against another day of unearthing an unfamiliar kind of chaos. The sun greeted him with an almost macabre cheeriness, oblivious to the unraveling mystery that continued to shape and warp the texture of the ordinary. As he navigated the labyrinthine maze of the precinct, the tangibility of his fear began to take shape. It started with faint whispers, lost on the brink of hearing, akin to the soft sigh of a secret. Then, the creeping, misshapen shadows in broad daylight, chilling his marrow with their uncanny presence. He fought to maintain his composure, attributing these oddities to the stress of the complex case and the echo of his childhood trauma. Throughout his interactions with the victims, the officers, and even the townspeople, his normally focused gaze began to flit nervously. The world, once so solid and understandable, seemed to be receding, replaced by an uncanny reality that flickered and shifted at the edge of perception. "Mr. Goodwin," Officer Daniels said one afternoon, concern etching lines onto face. "You seem distant. Is everything all right?" "I'm just trying to make sense of things," Simon admitted, his honesty wrapped in understatement. He did not dare confess the spectral apparitions that were starting to blur the borders of his reality. The investigation deepened, spiraling into a gnarled and twisted puzzle that defied the logic of human transgression. It was not just identities that were stolen. Entire realities seemed to have been ripped away, leaving in their wake a desolate landscape of bewildered victims and an investigator teetering on the edge of the impossible. One evening, he found himself in an old, musty library, its air heavy with dust and knowledge. He hoped to find clues in local lore, stories passed down through generations, perhaps containing inklings of similar happenings. His hands skimmed through ancient tomes, their words flowing like cryptic streams into his tired mind. Here, within the quiet embrace of fading parchment, he felt the boundary between reality and the unreal grow thinner, permeable. A sudden gust of wind blew through the open window, ruffling pages and whispering secrets. A book fell open to an ominous passage of ancient folklore. It told of strange happenings, of shadows that whispered and realities that were stolen, mirroring the haunting narrative of his current investigation. Outside, the city of Monroe lay under the watchful gaze of the moon, its buildings casting long, contorted shadows. Within the silent expanse of the library, he could hear his own heartbeat echoing the city's rhythm. As he stepped into the cool night, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows danced with a new, sinister energy. He could no longer ignore the presence that tugged at his senses, sending icy tendrils of dread through his body. The veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary, he realized, was not just lifting, it was vanishing. And so, with trepidation gnawing at his courage, he was about to tread into the unknown, to confront a reality that existed on the periphery of comprehension, at the nexus of dread and fascination. The once quaint town of Monroe had begun to wear a new face, one that seemed refracted through a distorted mirror of alien reality. The sunlight seemed darker, the air denser, the silence heavier. And at the heart of it, Simon stood on the precipice of understanding, peering into the swirling vortex of the unknown. His morning started not with the chirping of birds, but with the murmur of shadows, the phantom whispers worming their way into the fabric of his consciousness. The specters he'd seen at the edges of reality were now center stage, performing a macabre dance that both fascinated and horrified him. His interactions, previously marked by empathy and interest, took on an undertone of apprehension. The once familiar faces of Officer Daniels, the victims, even his own reflection in the mirror, were now overlaid with an ethereal, spectral quality that made him shudder. "Simon," Officer Daniels remarked, a hint of concern seeping into his voice, "you're a good investigator, but you're losing yourself to this case. It's more than just crime, isn't it?" Simon glanced at him, his eyes harboring a chilling depth of understanding. "It's an abyss, officer, and I'm standing on the edge." The investigation began to take a back seat to the seeping existential dread that he was grappling with. The stolen identities were not mere theft. They were abductions of existence itself, each victim losing more than just their name. They were losing their place in the fabric of reality, becoming mere echoes in the void. One afternoon, he found himself drawn to a hidden corner of Monroe, a place where the town's old roots sunk deep into the southern soil. A dilapidated, centuries-old church stood in quiet solitude, its spire stabbing into the overcast sky. Inside, the pews sat empty, the air thick with the scent of time and forgotten prayers. Here, amidst the echoes of old sermons, he felt an otherworldly presence, an entity too ancient, too vast to comprehend. The whispers, the shadowy figures, all seemed to emanate from this very place. His mind recoiled, yet was undeniably drawn towards the unholy truth that was beginning to unravel. The cosmic horror he had been witnessing was tied intrinsically to this town, to this church, a twisted and tangled knot of real and unreal. In the descending twilight, a piercing cold cut through him. The whispers grew louder, the shadows denser, and a strange energy hummed in the air. A terrible melody played on the strings of dread and despair. Being both the investigator and the victim of his own case, he stood inside the hallowed sanctuary, clutching at his humanity, while the veil between his world and the abyss grew thinner. Unsettled yet resolute, he stepped into the night, the specter of the church looming behind him. He was no longer just in pursuit of answers. He was in pursuit of his own survival and that of Monroe. The abyss had opened, the shroud was lifting, and he found himself bracing against the imminent descent into the terrible unknown. Monroe now lay beneath an obsidian sky, starless and ominous, as if the universe itself had turned its gaze away from the terror unfolding beneath. Simon, a beacon of courage in the impending darkness, stood at the threshold of a reality far removed from any conceivable normality. As the days faded into a blur, he found himself adrift in the sea of cosmic horror. His conversations with the town's folks, once filled with comfort and solidarity, were now punctuated by silence and hidden despair. Every interaction, every shared glance, carried the weight of the unspoken, the victims of reality theft forever altered, their lives a fading echo in the vast expanse of existence. "Simon," Officer Daniels said one dreary morning, the precinct quiet in the wake of the inexplicable. "I don't understand half of what's going on, but I trust you. We trust you. We're in this, whatever this is, together." Gazing at the officer, Simon felt a surge of gratitude. His inherent kindness, his innate need to help, found new strength. He was no longer alone. He was a beacon for Monroe, its guiding star in a starless sky. The investigation took on a new form. He delved deeper into the town's history, the eerie church, the lost folk tales, and the terrifying reality that encroached upon their existence. The town was not just a victim, it was a battleground where real and unreal clashed in a silent, dreadful war. One evening, within the forsaken sanctuary of the ancient church, he found himself face to face with the abyss. The whispers coalesced into a voice, an echo from the dawn of time, and the shadows took form, their terrifying figures woven from the threads of nightmare and chaos. Yet he did not falter. His fear was now tinged with acceptance. He was not here to conquer the horror, but to acknowledge it, to comprehend it, and in doing so, find a way to help the town and its people. The confrontation was not a battle, but a negotiation, a conversation between man and the unknowable. He offered understanding, empathy, and his innate strength to bear the unimaginable. The entity, an echo of cosmic horror, acknowledged him, its alien voice resonating in his mind, aware of his determination, his resilience. Beneath the starless sky, a once ordinary investigator prevailed. The stolen realities were returned, identities restored, but not without a cost. A profound change had taken place, a piece of the cosmic horror woven into the town's fabric, into his very being. Monroe was forever marked by the events, its identity fused with the shadows of the cosmic horror, and Simon, standing tall amidst the hushed relief of the town's people, was changed. His eyes held a glint of alien stars, his voice echoed with forgotten whispers, and his presence was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of cosmic dread. He looked up at the now star-filled sky. The abyss had been peered into, the shroud lifted, and he had prevailed. But the cosmic horror still lingered, an indelible part of him, of his town. They had returned from the edge of existence, forever bearing the scars of the journey into the unknown, their existence forever twinned with the cosmic dread beneath a starless sky. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.